Let's do it. All right. What's up, Lee?
So I'll get Peter to explain in a moment. So I read the description of the issue as creating a standardized way to initialize view apps. And I didn't do the right thing and dive down into the detail. I made a very bad assumption because I'd seen that I believe Incubation Engineering had done something recently where they tried to do something similar or some kind of standardizing, simplifying. When I looked at the solution that they put in place, what I asked and questioned and hoped is that we would literally have a HAML helper, a Ruby helper that we could call in a HAML, and that would kind of create the placeholder, the div, create the JavaScript to, if bootstrap's the right term, to then bootstrap and inject the view app into that div, to do all of that. So that's what I was hoping we would be able to do. But I suspect that that's very ambitious. So I'd love to know, A, what that issue actually was asking for, and then maybe discuss this crazy idea of being able to do it with a HAML helper.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe I can just give some context on why I created the issue. And the main reason is it's just been like a pretty big pain point for me, and I assume a lot of other engineers, is like you come to a page, you need to debug something, you realize it's a view application, you find the div, you find and it's passing some data to the backend or from Ruby to Vue. So you find the helper and you find the data that it's passing, and then you figure out, is it encoding it as JSON or is it doing it as a bunch of different data attributes? And then you go to and then you have to find the JavaScript file and you have to figure out how it's parsing it and how it's passing it to Vue. Is it passing it as props or provide? And then, yeah, so it's just like a bunch of different things. And then you could go to a different Vue app and it'd be doing it like totally different. So yeah, I just was hoping that we could maybe try and come up with a way that we do it the same for all the Vue applications. So it's just easier to find a Vue app and figure out what's going on in terms of like having.
So I wonder if you're sort of saying we want to standardize the approach, and the easiest way to standardize the approach is by creating a helper or something that if you always use that, then you're always going to be following the same approach.
I mean, that was my initial idea, but yeah, so the proposal that I put in here, one, I haven't tested any code, like actually if it works. It was just, I just wrote it in the issue. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt. And then yeah, it was just my first idea of how it might work. Definitely open to suggestions if someone had an idea of like a cleaner way to do basically the two goals that I wrote down is what I was hoping to achieve.
So I'm going to start sharing a screen so we're kind of looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
So this is the issue. This is an awesome idea. And I really like this part about creating the Rails helper. Because doing this to JSON thing is so much better than the individual data parsing. The whole need for parse Boolean is so strange.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to encapsulate all of that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and we do it different ways every time, so it's hard to know which way is doing it. So
exactly,
be like, this is the way we're doing it, and this is the helper, and you don't even have to think about how it's being done. So,
Eduardo from the Incubation Engineering, he started this MR spinning up one just for some of these incubation apps. Yeah. When we started, I was like, this is so helpful. Beyond that, like, we need to make this just a general helper. So we whatever we build, we want to, this is already merged in this init simple app, and it has some docs around it too. So
awesome. I didn't look at that, but that's the thing that we repeat over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So looking at, where's an example of it? Oh yeah. So I guess here's one. So it's like rather than this whole block, it's just
nice.
Here's the ID and
Love it.
here's the component. And so what Eduardo what he opted for was, oh, where is the yes, he opted for standardizing what the props are going to be like. That this the init simple app looks for data view model.
You might have to switch your camera off, Paul. Where I'm assuming everyone's losing you as much as I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man. Well, all right. Let's try this out. All right, is this better? Are we okay?
So far, so good. But
all right, sorry, I was coming in too high of a resolution there. So rather than creating a mapper of different properties to all that we would provide, we opted to just have a standard view model attribute that then spreads into all the properties that we would receive from the component. So this takes view model and then just puts it right into all the different properties. So like this line of code, this is so sweet how small this is.
Absolutely.
So I think what would be really cool then is if we can standardize this thing.
Yeah.
And even have like some named argument safety kind of thing so that someone doesn't accidentally create something that's not a view model or whatever here, whatever. So I think this is a great idea. And you're not the only person thinking about this. It's such a good idea. Like, I think this is very much what's the word I'm thinking of? I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but I just mean like this has a lot of interest already with it. So it'd be interesting to work on the Rails helper, I think, side of this.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Did you just to indulge me? What I think, Peter, you were saying essentially we're not really allowed to, or our linting, if nothing else, would get super pissy if we tried to inject JavaScript. But what do you think about even being able to remove that the JavaScript bit and just literally being able to use the Rails helper, the Ruby helper to, init the app?
I don't know how it's gonna work, man.
Yeah, I think it'd be really nice, but with our current setup, I have no idea how you would make it work.
Like, how would you map? How would you get a reference to the component? That's the thing. Well, that's one problem. I'm not sure how we would do.
So this is probably where my lack of understanding of Vue struggles. So is the problem that all of our JavaScript is compiled, or is it not compiled? That's what I guess, because if it's not compiled, or some isn't, some, if only the Vue apps are compiled but the raw JavaScript aren't, then I don't see why we can write a Rails helper that creates a JavaScript method with the kind of imports and the create Vue app commands, if that makes sense.
It's all compiled, yeah.
Right. So that's essentially why we can't do it, right? Because the Ruby stuff would be trying to create real-time raw vanilla JavaScript, but actually that vanilla JavaScript's no good. It needs to be compiled and can't be done at runtime. Okay.
Yeah. We would need Webpack to, like, here's how I think you could feasibly do it. We would need Webpack to read HAML, which it doesn't right now. So like all of that would be somehow we would need to read HAML and use that to figure out what the chunks it needs to create are.
Yeah.
But it's not doing that right now. And be really interesting.
Yeah.
So let me throw just one more random thought before I try and be quiet. So let's say that we our helper applies a class to all view apps. Let's say the class is view-app, right? And then all of our index scripts, they look for something with the view app attribute. Or is this just, again, it won't work because they have to be compiled, but could they not just look for something with the view app attribute and then read the name of the view app that they need to, I think you know where
I think I know what you mean, but like, so the other situation is like in a single page, we have maybe 10 view apps.
Yeah.
So how do we map one element to one component? And that's the challenge of why we usually come up with unique IDs, is so that we know this component is supposed to go with this slot. You know what I mean?
I think this is where you're going to say it falls down, but would you mind either share the link in the chat that you had? I think you had that MR open.
Yeah.
So I just want to have a look at that.
The MR or the issue? The MR that
MR
Eduardo worked on?
Exactly.
Yeah, here's the MR.
Because what I was hoping or expecting, is that in the HAML, you would tell, so that the class, so your generic JavaScript importer, let's call it, would be looking for everything with a specific class. The helper would be adding that class, and you would define, when you call the helper, like create simple view app, you would pass it the name of the component you want to mount. And
I see.
Then the JavaScript would loop through, okay, looking for anything with this class, document query selector all with this class, the view app. For each one it finds, it uses the data attribute or whatever it is to get the name of the component, and then bootstraps.
That's the bit that we don't have, is the HAML, and that would be really interesting. But like right now, what we would need to do then is like almost pass in the import URL to the component for that view app, which would be cool, but we don't have any like compile time assertion that.
I think maybe the thing that I was going to say there, is it because we're not standard? If we had standard, obvious, predictable import paths, maybe it would be possible. But because
I think that's a great
we're in view shared, and sometimes we're in here, and sometimes we're in there.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think it's okay for us to be, what's the word I'm thinking of? To lean on a convention that we just adopt, but we'd want to make sure that things fail at compile time if something's not set up correctly.
Right.
That's, I think, the challenge.
So if you're calling a view component, you're trying to call this helper and referencing a view component that doesn't exist, you should know about it earlier rather than.
But we could make that we could do a linting rule probably for something like that. But the other situation then that happens is, I mean, I'm thinking ahead of what will end up happening here, but I don't totally think that's off the table. I know, Andrew or Eduardo, what do you all think about what do you all think of HAML referencing the component?
I think my gut feeling is that it may be possible with a combination of conventions, linting, and things like that. It doesn't seem that impossible, the idea. I mean, what Peter and Eduardo suggested is also a great step forward into a very doable and very simple. And I have been thinking about that as well, because we repeat over and over and over the same things, and it is something that we should pursue. But what Lee was also suggesting is also, I think, that maybe we need to consider. Yes, I think it's doable.
I guess somebody's seen the repetition of in the index.js, the repetition of the bootstrapping of importing the component and bootstrapping that, and massively simplified it, and that's amazing. And I'm maybe taking the next few steps and saying, but we still have to create a bunch of index.js's, which they literally just call this method, and it seems like we're having to do both ends, but no. Sorry, Andrew, your turn.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Can we make a Rails generator for these index.js's? Like that's a possible option. So it's really easy to spit one out, and then it lets users still, I don't know, customize it if they have to. And then another thought is, when you do like a dynamic Webpack import, does it have to be a string, or can we like shove things in a variable and then can we like pass the import path in through gone somehow, and then have gone like iterate over?
I'm pretty sure it has to be a string, because I think that Webpack likes to control the URL. So when that Webpack actually compiles, it'll put the hash in the URL that you're trying to import or something.
Yeah. Can we do like I
But
like
with
the Rails generator, but can we do it like the way we do fixtures, where they're potentially, what's the word, like idempotent?
Oh my gosh, I was just discussing this word. It's such a weird word. Idempotent or whatever.
I've only ever seen it written and not read aloud. So where you can just like run them over and over again, and it doesn't change anything, because then we can theoretically like just generate these entry points as well, which would be fun.
I mean, I think it's really possible. I think we could solve this from the Webpack side. Webpack reading YAML, looking for these calls, and the Webpack can actually generate these page bundles. It already is generating page bundles by looking for these index.js's. Instead of looking at these index.js's in pages, the pages directory, we can just look for top level YAML views, grepping for these function calls. It's a crazy idea, I know, but we could.
That's like a lot of YAML to process, though, right? Like that's a lot of, because you'll do crazy stuff in YAML.
That's true. That's true.
Partial.
Yeah.
So you have to chunk
with
through all of
partials that
them.
want to work. No, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You're right. No,
I don't know anybody else, but I also do not like YAML, and I would prefer. I don't know. I don't really want to be like jamming more stuff into YAML.
That's funny.
I don't know if we want to jam more stuff into Webpack either.
That's
right?
true.
Like that's
So we don't want to jam more stuff anyway. What's the baby step then? What's the iterative approach? What can we attack first? Let's look back at your proposal, Pete.
Let's make a Rails helper that like creates the ID div, whatever, but then like pushes that ID through on in some sort of labeled way so that they're mapped together. And then when you your mount script doesn't reference some raw string, it just references like gone.id, gone.myAppID.
For what would the gone be?
It would capture the ID that you're creating.
So, but here's that support multiple view apps.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that'll work out, because we have multiple view apps per page at times, right?
All of the time, I would imagine, but
but it's like you're still naming them, right? Like it's not so much that you're trying to. It's just a way to like make it so that you don't have to rename the ID if you end up having to rename the ID. Like, it's just that's like a sweet bonus.
What bucket do we put it in? Even if we still rename the ID, and if I have multiple apps, when I read from it, how can I read it from just one bucket? Well, at the end of the day, don't we need to?
Yeah. Well, that's why the generator would be nice, right?
Yeah, I think generator is a cool idea.
So the only I think you all probably dabble in full stack. The only thing I'd say about generators is so we've got like there's a Rails generator for generating migrations, and 90% of the time you use it and then you end up throwing away most of what it generates, just copy pasting from previous migrations anyway. I kind of wonder.
I mean, it's like Chat GPT, right?
I think the point of the generator isn't to have it be perfect. The point is to like skip the step of figuring out like where the file goes and all of that.
Right. Yeah.
Because you probably still need to, you would probably still want to call like view.use Apollo or view.use Vuex or whatever you have to do.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I think a generator would be really cool to help solve where do we put these things.
Yeah. The other option is we be really strict about the generator and like compile them like we do our like fixtures, where, I mean, that's like a mess of our spec, right? But you know, like where you can't edit the generated files, they're just like, we have a big comment at the top that's like, this is machine generated, don't touch this, put it somewhere else. And then, but then you have to like,
we don't check in our entry points to source control. They're machine generated.
yeah. And
That
but
sounds
then
scary.
that adds like a compile step, and it's kind of, it'd probably be a pain locally to like have to regenerate all the entry points every time you want to add a new one, and like
Check the right mounting.
That's a really interesting idea though, because yeah, that's like kind of suggesting kind of what I was saying, but they're not generated at runtime, they're all generated at compile time. So they still exist, but just nobody ever has to necessarily create them.
yeah.
I think we'll need to check them into source control. Right?
How do we deal with fixtures, right? Like, didn't we start caching those somehow?
I don't think so.
There was like the dark times where you had to run it every time and go make a coffee because it took so long, and now
it still takes a long time. I think maybe we have
to run it as much.
How I run it is I actually look for the last successful pipeline and I download them from.
I think that I thought that's what it does behind the scenes now. I don't know. I could have sworn, because it used to be so much worse, right? Like I'm not going crazy here. It used to be that you had to generate.
It used to be much longer than it is. I think that is.
Is that what it is?
I think somehow the performance of running the fixtures has improved.
Or maybe it was like Karma would just fall over if there was one missing and just doesn't, and that's the change.
That's also related to it as well. Yeah. Marco, I'm reading Marco's comment in Zoom. To inject the index could be we require components that can be mounted. Export and mount file into the helper. We only provide the ID class of the container and the name of the component to mount. Component the helper would inject the right mounting. Yeah, I think it's very doable. What were you gonna say, Eduardo?
Where is Webpack in that idea, for example, from Marco? How does Webpack knows how to bundle certain indexes together?
Yeah, that's what we currently get by separating everything into pages, because we get different page chunks. I'm not sure if I totally. I think that there might be something missing from what Marco's bringing up.
Well, that's kind of similar to what I was thinking, where if we could dynamically import things in a variable, right? Because then
I see.
As long as you can pass the file path along, Webpack will still dynamically import it, and then.
Yeah, but it needs to be in the bundle somehow. So like we need to tell what components to be in what bundles.
Yeah.
Which is the problem, I think.
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting how possible this feels, but I think at the end of the day, it is like, okay, it might be not profitable to pursue this because of how complicated the approach would be to implement getting Webpack and Rails to work in sync where there's just a single source of truth here. It's probably not as iterative as keeping them separate. Maybe we can like add some linting to just ensure they're set up correctly.
Marco, that's a good thought. I think the way it works right now is that we'd have to figure out a way to label mountable components as mountable. And then that would be a whole other can of worms.
That's actually a really good idea though. That's the bundle or these apps. But what's also challenging is that would be interesting though.
For the sake of the recording, Marco asks, could there be a bundle for each mountable component? Which is, yeah.
Well, also I think we would have to dynamically import every component, which we probably like. It's great for modals and stuff, but stuff that we want to be like shown really quickly, it wouldn't work as well, I think.
Yeah, I can't help but think we want a bundle for the whole page assets, which can include multiple mountable components.
Maybe
how would a bundle?
Trick here.
How would a
The
bundle?
trick here is server-side rendering.
Yeah, so there's an RFC. There's an RFC that was to set up server-side rendering that basically does all this that we're talking about. And it sounds like, or it's been closed, but it sounds like there was some progress on it. We just decided not to invest time in that.
Right.
Yeah. So I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to look at it.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. Well, I think for the immediate term, I think that the existing init simple app is really good abstraction to be building on top of because implementation is simple. It's just here's some standard we can adhere to. I don't know if there's anything we want to improve with the API between the two, but I do think having a Rails helper that just is symmetrical with the JavaScript helper of the init simple app, I think that'll go a long way of maybe, I don't know, calling some sort of like create simple view app. I don't know what we want to call it.
So it would, are you saying it would create the index.js? You tell it kind of which XAML file you were going to be putting it, and it'll create the index file in the right place.
You're going too far ahead. That's so fancy, Lee. That's so fancy.
So what would it actually do then?
It would just create the element, man. It's just create the little
and then code the
ID
JSON.
Yeah, just create the little.
It's definitely the first iteration, right?
Sorry. I thought we were talking about the generator that Andrew was talking about, but we're just talking about the helper.
Yes.
To basically create a div with an ID and a view model to push data into that.
Yes, the simpler idea. Yes.
It doesn't do much, but it does something.
But it's a step. It's a step in the right way.
I think if it can mirror what's happening on the front end, that'll just really heighten the what's the word I'm thinking of? That'll really heighten what the intention is between how the HAML and front end need to use this. Does anyone want to maybe drive to just create this little Rails helper, maybe for that one app that was touched by Eduardo in that MR?
Yeah, I don't mind driving.
Cool. That'd be great, Peter. Thanks. Yeah, just to clarify, when we're talking about generators and stuff, that's just talking. Like, no, we're not actually going to do anything there. I'm joking. I'm sorry, Andrew. There's a big difference between the talking session of the front end pairing and then the actual coding session of it.
just on that note, actually, I wanted to give you an update. The thing we started on the fork stuff a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's turned into like Alice in
no.
Wonderland special. Like, you know,
Oh,
when
no.
you find stuff that's just so coupled to like a million things, it's turned
Yeah.
into a bit of that.
Oh.
The button that we were looking at, we were treating it quite simply, but the button can appear like when you're on different branches. It can appear when you're inside of a merge request. It can, and there's all sorts of crazy logic in there. So I'm still beavering away at it, but it's unfortunately not as simple as we hope.
If you want to ping me at any time on it, I can
Awesome.
drop in some asynchronous
Appreciate
ideas.
Thanks.
I can't help but feel I'm responsible for that button. So I'm sure if you look at the blame, the blame starts with me. So yeah.
All right. So yeah, well, maybe let's start with creating the Rails helper that kind of mirrors the init simple app.
Do we want to just call it from the Rails side init simple app? We can call it the same thing.
We could. I would maybe propose changing this to init simple view app or something. At least with having the word view in it, so that like when you're looking through Haml, you're like simple app. Like what kind of app?
Exactly.
If it says view, it's nice. I think
that's a good idea.
As long as we don't call it init smart app.
Smart app.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we should just find like a place in GDK to like create a view app somewhere, maybe like the profile or something. Okay. So user show handle. So yeah, we could just like create an app here.
Do we want to try to just replace one, or do we want to create a new one?
Good question.
Did you look at one of the ones that's using the init simple app?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Although it might be in some obscure place with behind feature flags, etc., etc. So
the projects ML candidates, that sounds something behind a feature flag, machine learning, maybe.
Yeah, sorry, maybe that was a bad idea.
I don't know. Maybe let's just try creating, because then it'll kind of give us an idea of like what you have to do to create a new app and like how annoying it is or unannoying. So yeah, let's try creating the helper first. Which, as far as my understanding of Rails helpers, you can put them anywhere and they're all available in Haml, I think, like as long as they're in the helpers directory.
Yeah.
So I don't know what does everyone think? Let's see. Do we have like a view helper.rb file yet? Or
that's definitely what we should call it.
Do you think we should call it view helper? Or do you think we should call it init simple view app helper?
Well, what if we need a more complicated app in it?
A nip complicated view?
Single responsibility. Come on.
Yeah, maybe not having an adjective in it is a good idea.
We'll just call it view helper for now.
Okay.
Def.
We want to def a module, right?
Yes.
Yeah, module.
Let's copy what another I was doing. Tab helper. If you have a hard
can't
time.
forget the frozen string literal.
Yeah. I don't know why, but so then
yep, awesome.
So
I think the arguments are going to be ID here. Let's just do the ID is the first one, and then view model is kind of that's the name that we were using for the model we're passing to the view. Cool.
And then, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm so impressed you know this off the top of your head. The content tag, I always have
Well,
to
I basically wrote it out in the issue.
Oh, nice.
Ruby doesn't have fancy shorthand in objects yet.
Fancy shorthand? Are you like
No,
Ruby?
I wish it did, but like
Ruby needs like a JSX, like RBX, where you can just
yeah, it does.
but I think we also need to pass the ID to this thing.
Oh, you're right.
It's semantics, but as with my idea, yours is defaulted to indenting with 4 spaces instead of 2. So.
Isn't that what we do?
I think we do too.
Oh, no, we do too. Yeah, you're right.
Uh-oh.
I'm sure there's a setting for that I should have set, but
I keep forgetting to change that, and then I just change it manually every time.
same.
Cool.
All right. So
That's
then
it.
if we did
We've
like
done it.
simple app,
We might want to rename the module. I don't know how Ruby would handle conflicts.
Oh,
well-
yes, thank you.
To be honest, it's probably fine, but
I don't think it is. I
I
think,
wouldn't. I think it'd get mad.
because it actually wants the module to match the file name too. I don't know if
well,
that's
that's the linter, right?
it might be an interpolation step.
No, I think Ruby actually
Right.
Marco, who's lurking earlier, made a copy, a backup of a file with like the same file name, but put like underscore BKP or something like that, and Rails immediately exploded because it was trying to load. It was expecting the path name to match the module name or the file name or the class name, and yeah, it's super picky.
Mm.
So that's like a Rails thing. Rails.
I think Rails is probably related to it.
Yeah.
The one kind of bummer about this whole thing is like, because Hamel's kind of like annoying to work with, a lot of the time we'll probably end up moving this into its own helper.
Yeah,
and then having to create another helper, which is like kind of like, man. But
do you want to do spread args instead of doing in view model? We could do ID, but then everything else is a spread args that we throw into a view model like thing.
in here.
So like if we go back to our Hamel,
yeah.
Well, let's just see what it would look like if we go back to the.
Then we would we wouldn't have to do that.
And yeah, what if not even that? What if it was just foo and Baz? Like we still do the named arguments.
Oh. I don't know.
Do we like that?
I kind of prefer to be more explicit, but I don't know.
Yeah, and also the it's a bit more standard, like in backend world, like when you're newing up things, you tend to quite often you pass in, like, let's say it's a service that's doing something like with an issue service, you'll probably new it up by passing it a project, and then maybe the current user, but then the third parameter does tend to be a hash, an object. That's pretty standard with Ruby, so I think that matches that quite well.
Okay. Yeah.
What we currently have, you're saying, Lee?
So sorry?
You're saying what is currently on the screen is like more standard in Ruby world?
Yeah, so if you, let me see if I've got an ID with GitLab open.
I definitely like that we're using the named arguments, because Ruby will fail at interpolation time if the name arguments don't match, which is great.
Yeah. I like named arguments. Then it's like obvious what each thing is.
Right. So I like this as it is.
Yeah, we can start with this.
Yeah, so if you look, I'll send you a link our base container service, like everything is supposed to extend our base, all services at least are supposed to extend our base container service, and it's a pretty standard pattern that we pass in a container, a user, and then params. And with pretty much every other Ruby thing, that's the sort of pattern that I've tended to see, that you've got a couple of standard parameters, but then everything else is just passed as kind of an object or a hash at the end.
Sounds good.
Marco says Ruby 3 will also be picky about not using named arguments, or did I understand wrong?
I think, I don't know about Ruby 3. I think we as backend as a whole is moving towards doing more named arguments. So I would be surprised if Ruby 3 didn't support that move.
How does everyone feel about requiring this to be an ID and not a selector? Because it would match a little bit better with the helper, the Rails helper.
Yeah,
right,
I like that.
Yeah.
Because there should only ever be one of them.
Yeah, I think generally it's probably better to use IDs for the mounting the view apps anyways.
And we have a lot of instances where we have like many buttons on a page where we have to query for all of them.
I don't know.
Great question. I'm trying to think of an example where you might want to mount the same view app multiple times.
We do.
We don't ever have that. Do we really have that?
Yeah, definitely.
We have
that's a simple app.
Those are usually the simplest ones too, because it's like a button with a modal, and then you just or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying.
True. So maybe
it's like one of our strategies for slowly converting a page from Haml to view.
So maybe we do want this as selector for now.
Can you elaborate on an example of that? Because I can see you having multiple view apps, but I'm struggling to find where you mount the same view app against multiple.
Yeah, let's keep this as an ID. I think we want to keep it as an ID. If we run into that problem, we'll solve it then.
True. You can always convert it. Yeah, you could always figure it out somehow.
Yeah, well, the solution would be a init not so simple app takes in a selector and it maps through all the elements, assigning random IDs to them, and then calls this one.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so then let's just create a view app in
the profile
bonus.
Full view. Oh, I think we're missing a closing pointy.
Wondering why I wasn't completing. So then I really need some sort of generator here, but so we would, I guess the way it's currently set up is like we would have a foo prop and a baz prop.
Yep.
My experience is we're more commonly injecting them as props. Is your experience different or a bit 50-50 or?
So I do think we more commonly inject them because more often than not, it'll be something that's just treated as some global view state that's not going to change. And we just need to reference the project ID everywhere. But when Eduardo worked on this, he kind of, for simplifying all of it, opted to let that be the responsibility of the root app. I'll receive it as a prop and I could do all the type checking and stuff, but then I can also then
Cool.
provide
Okay,
those
nice.
on to all the children.
Can you
Okay.
do that though? Can you take a prop and then turn it into a provide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again?
I am 90% certain you can.
Oh, with like the provide is
Function.
it like
Yeah.
return. Okay.
Yeah.
Doing something weird here, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but
So I think that's cool because I like that we would get the type checking at developer time.
yeah, okay. I'm good with that pattern.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's probably a little bit more, like, as we're being a little bit more explicit than we usually are, but I think it's fine. It keeps a init simple app really simple.
I mean, the provide is just as simple to be, in my opinion, but
I mean, that's true too.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess I kind of lean towards the provide, one, because it's not reactive by default, and two, because then it's just like you have access to all these variables everywhere without having to do this in the again or whatever. Like a lot of the time it'll be like a path. It'll be like, I need this path from Rails, but I need it like 3 components down, or whatever. So with this pattern, it's like, okay, I take the path and then I pass the path of the prop, and then I have to provide it again instead of just having it available in the first place.
Maybe this is something else that can be like shareable. This could be the simple app.
Like a wrapper.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be a dreadful idea, but I mean, is there any reason not to be able to have kind of both, that the object or hash or whatever it is that we're passing can have a props and an inject, or props and provide? Or
yeah, that's one idea, is we could do both.
That's kind of what I was proposing. So I was proposing to update init simple app.
yeah.
Take a set props and set provide
Nice
function. And then it just like, so then in the app you'd say set provide. It passes the view model, and then you can just explicitly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of like takes away some of the simple part of it.
Well, the simple part is consuming it, right?
Well, I do like the let's lean towards a convention. Like, let's standardize. The goal is to standardize some of this.
Yeah.
So I like, let's find what our preference is. I have a preference to, let's be really explicit about what we provide, and because the consumers of this thing, if they can consume by prop, I think that's a safer preference, because provide is some global namespace, and it's just helpful for some props. It's helpful for some attributes out of convenience, that yes, but in general it's not as safe as a component declaring its props, give me the things explicitly that I need, because that can help promote a higher reusability of functions as well. So it's like, I have a slight preference towards, let's only provide when the convenience is clearly a win here. And I like doing props.
I like props too, except for when I have to pass them down like 4 levels.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I like Peter's. I like your extra functions. I think they're worth it.
Okay.
Because
I agree.
I think what makes the init simple app simple isn't necessarily that the function is simple, but that using it is simple, right?
That was exactly my point. Consuming it should be simple. The actual, GL form fields makes creating forms simple, but boy, is it not simple.
Exactly. It's the same idea.
Did you say GL form fields is not simple?
The
I was going to call it simple
implement
form fields.
the
No, you should have called it
Like-
smart form fields.
I should
consuming
have called
it
it smart
is
form.
super simple. Building it in the first place is
I
a
see.
brain teaser for sure.
I see. So what do we think of this then? We accept ID, accept the component, and then accept a hash of options. And one of the options is, I don't know, provide keys or something like that. And that is just what we'll pick. We'll pick those from the view model and we'll omit them. So rather than having a mapping function like this, can we just accept an array of keys to provide versus
Seems
props?
overly complex.
Same.
Well, wait.
Rather
It's
than
not
just
the same.
having two, here's a list of props and here's a list of provide.
Right, because we would only need to set one list, and that list we would just subtract that from the view model to get the props, or that, and then we intersect it to get the provide. We don't have to provide two sets of.
It seems way more complicated to me for some reason. You're
One thing
providing the
that's-
same amount of data as two separate lists rather than combining it into one and then providing something else that then does some weird smoke
That's
and
not
mirrors
weird.
magic.
Maybe I don't. It's making a
I
lot
think
of sense
one
in my head, but
One of the secret things that helps to make this init simple app easy to use when it comes to using these functions is that if you do set them, you don't have to go finding what like Ruby helper you're using to set up your view model, right? So
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think
I
it
think
makes sense to be able to provide both. I think it makes sense to not have to provide anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But I think it does make sense that if you want to provide both, you can.
wait, I'm confused. I think I missed something. What do you mean provide both?
Like you
So
want,
there's
sorry, yeah,
two-
bad word.
two
If you want
arguments.
to explicitly set your props and explicitly set your provides, you should be able to do both. You shouldn't, because then you can, it might be easier for, it would be much easier for me personally to be able to see like these are the keys that are available for both and not necessarily have to go Ruby mining for my mount function still.
Right. Can I, Peter? Can I drive you a little bit to clarify what I'm kind of suggesting?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
If you just go back to the code, and go to where we were calling init simple app. Are we calling it yet? We're not calling it yet.
Not yet.
Okay, let's end on line 18 where we have this little example, the mount here my app thing.
Yeah.
Can we add comma after the my app, and then in curly braces, let's call it provide keys, and as an array, this is an array of strings of the keys of the view model that we will provide versus propify. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just don't see how. So then inside this same object or hash, you're then going to include all of the objects that you actually want to pass in, right? So do comma, I don't know, foo, one, baz, hello, and then
Well, so
some
then we
other
don't.
random
What I'm
stuff.
saying is, if we make this an array, we don't need to provide. We don't provide is not the right word. We don't need to
Set.
We don't need to set. We don't need to explicitly declare what the props would be. It's just whatever is not included here is props. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the
But
thing.
you have to include the actual data, right? Where's it?
Oh, it
or
comes.
is it-
Well, the actual data is on the data attribute, right?
Of course, right.
Right. So on
I
line
think
31,
I like this.
Got it. So it just reads the data and says every single key that's in this data has got to be passed to the component. If it's been specified as a provide key, we want to provide it. If it hasn't, we'll prop it.
I was just saying, like, Lodash has really nice helpers
Got
of just
it.
omit and pick. And so we would just
Yeah.
omit,
Sorry, I
provide
was
keys.
thinking that we were passing in all of the view model, and then that we were re-specifying which of those bits were provided, but we're not. We're just specifying the provided ones. They're all grabbed from the data, and they're all assumed that they all need to be passed to the view app. If they're in this list, then they'll be provided. If they're not, then they'll be prompted. Awesome. Sorry.
I think that's what I'm thinking. What do you think, Andrew?
I like it. I just think we should be able to set both.
You think you should be able to do prop keys?
Yeah.
What?
To Andrew's previous point about not having to switch context back to the Ruby files, go Ruby mining to figure out what data is available. Like, say we just, in this example, we just provide foo, then there's still, I guess we're defining the Baz prop in here, but we're not explicitly saying that Baz is getting passed as a prop. We'd have to go back to here to see that it is back to the HAML or whatever. So if we're explicitly saying like, this is the provide and this is the props, then to me, it's easier to come into it and be like, this is the data I have available, which is kind of one of my goals is to be able to like come to the JavaScript and be like, this is the data I have.
Makes it
the
less
other flip side of
simple.
this is that sometimes your props keys is shorter than your provide keys as well.
What do you mean?
Like you're injecting more than you're propping from your.
See what you're saying. Yeah.
You have many paths, but you have like one value.
No, I
see what you're
think
saying. Yeah.
So sorry. I think I was definitely misunderstanding a lot of that, but now I think I understand. So yeah, you're not actually providing any of the data, but you could provide a list of. God, provide is such a terrible word.
Well, I mean,
pass. You
explicitly set.
Yes, you could pass a
Explicitly
list of keys.
And
the
fact that it's possible.
one.
Well, I guess it doesn't. I see that you could do provide foo and prop foo, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But that doesn't. For some reason it's short-circuiting something in my head.
So you're saying, Paul, you don't like the fact that you could accidentally do both.
But I guess it's not a bad thing because that just means you're doing both. It's available in both places. So I guess it's.
Yeah, it wouldn't work though, because it'd be like they would both be this.foo, which would have a problem with it. I mean, we could do a check and be like, oh, you have the key in both provide and prop. This is probably a mistake, whatever.
Well, that's true, but even though it's also provided, that doesn't necessarily mean it's injected in every context either. So I agree with what you're saying that's true too. That it's not. This is interesting. Part of me is just thinking, let's just do it in both, like no matter what. We could totally get away with that because if we pass extra props here, those just get ignored, right, in view land. So the root component only needs to declare what props it's actually only interested in. And everything else really can be a provide inject. I'm fine if we just want to do both.
But what would happen? What would happen if I'm just trying to think if there's any scenario. I don't think there is a scenario. I'm thinking because you can only have one root component ultimately. So there's no way you could have different things injected from different places.
Right. Nope.
But could you have injected something because you were saying you can provide from components. So you could have, like, say this is mounting a root component and you provide something called foo, but then the root component then provides something called foo to be injected to a child component.
How would that happen? Better be damn sure you know what you're doing.
Yes.
But it's like a very rare scenario.
Yeah, this is where provide is like
dangerous.
You're trading, safe interfaces for convenience. And yes, child components can overwrite the global context, and it's not. You just got to be aware of that.
I do wonder if Vue is smart enough to like isolate that overwrite to things below it on the
It
tree.
will only do
That
it.
would-
Yes, it will only do it
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it behaves how you'd expect it to behave anyway,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah. But I think so. That's interesting. I kind of think then we don't need to redeclare what's provided and what's propped. We could just provide everything as prop.
Yeah.
Explicitly set everything as props. And explicitly provide everything.
You don't look comfortable with that, Peter.
And it's the consumer, the root app really gets to decide what are my props that I'm really concerned about.
So what you're saying is what we currently have, you like?
No,
I think
no, just pass everything to the component as a provide and everything as a prop.
Yeah.
I see.
Because
yeah,
the component doesn't need to consume everything it's receiving here.
Is there any performance issues with that? The only thing I can think of is, so if we pass everything as a prop to this component, then wouldn't it get like, and then I don't define any props here, wouldn't it automatically get added to the first element as attributes?
That's like what's funny is it won't, because we're using render functions. Render functions, you have to explicitly say adders.
Okay.
This is the difference between the Vue template and render functions. That's what I would think, but it's not the case because of render functions. If that was the case, we could also look at the props defined in our component as this is the source of truth of what we want. We could select it down to props. I would strongly suggest we don't declare these keys multiple times, because the keys will change. And my biggest concern is like, okay, it looks like it should be available, but actually the underlying helper key changed. And so this isn't what you think it is. So I really like having the helper as the single source of truth for what is available.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have to worry about complicated objects being mutated.
Yeah, we should freeze this, right?
Well, like the data's coming from the back Ruby, so it's never going to change. Like you can't mutate props. So it theoretically, it doesn't need to be reactive. Like if you're passing an object from Ruby, it shouldn't. You don't want Vue making it reactive because it's unnecessary.
Right.
So yeah, we should. I guess Simon was saying you can use object.freeze or shallow ref to make props non-reactive. This is the Vue. Well, this is Vue 3, so I don't know if we can use shallow ref, but
I think object freezing our Vue model makes sense, but that's being just hyper defensive, because I think our linter is going to prevent us from mutating injectables and mutating props, hopefully, but it can't catch everything.
I don't trust it.
I agree.
I mean, it's kind of won't happen that often, but from a performance standpoint, it doesn't make sense to add a listener to something that's not reactive or whatever. So
see you, Eduardo. Thanks for hopping on.
But yeah, we can I guess we would just do like this.
What does forgive me, what does that do?
I think we put this in props. Freeze.
Yeah, we have to put it in props.
What am I doing? Where is the props? Oh, okay.
We lost our props key.
Yeah, okay.
Object freeze
just makes it immutable.
Which for layman's amongst us means
you can't change, it's read only.
I think we don't need to wrap it in curlies either. I think we can just object freeze.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you can't change. I don't really understand how would you change?
So Vue tries.
If you do, if you
Go
do
ahead.
something like mutable, right? So like if you let's say you have some sort of deeply nested object, right?
Yeah.
That you could theoretically change that object in a number of ways. Like what's the object.assign? I think mutates the object, right? Like that's the big one.
Or even running like dot sort, an array dot sort will mutate the
Yeah.
underlying array. And this can cause view app issues when children mutate things that are owned by the parent,
Okay.
which is why we have the
Okay.
whole event, component flow state stuff. But when you do object freeze, that's native JavaScript way of saying this object is frozen. You can't write to this. You can't even try to add fancy properties to it. This is a frozen object. And Vue
So that-
will hands off, not try to make it reactive.
Okay. Although props aren't reactive by nature anyway, are they?
They are.
Vue tries to make whatever it can reactive. Vue is very generous with its reactivity tentacles.
If the parent changes something about a prop, it changes in the child, right? Like
Well, parents can't change their props. So that's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. Here is, I think what props is interesting is I don't know if Vue will actually make those reactive because they're not part of a data, That's the data function is the thing that actually makes things reactive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I really don't know. It's probably just safe to just freeze because that's our intention. This thing shouldn't change.
And then if we try and mutate it anywhere, then it'll complain, right?
Yeah. It'll throw a big error.
Cool.
Yeah. Now the next question is, how do we make this simple app work with Vuex?
Well, you could do. I mean, I think.
Oh, geez, no.
Do you like Vuex? UX.
Oh no. I used to really like Vuex until I didn't touch it for a while, and then I started like getting pinged to review Vuex Apollo false, Vuex false. I love that. I started getting
just a list of plugins.
Yeah, plugins. Yeah, there you go.
Anytime I'm pinged to review something that touches Vuex, I'm not surprised anymore, but I always appreciate it. It takes like 7+ files to make one really small change.
That's just because that's us that we've dug our own hole on that one.
I think it's also Vuex's fault, but like compared to Redux, you don't think so? You don't? I mean, you think this is us? You don't think it's?
I think this is us. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think I will admit the mutations aspect really adds a lot of crud to things, but I think splitting everything into 4 files is our fault. I guess 5 files is our fault. Like that's us. We've done that.
What do you mean with the mappers and the getters and the this and that and the other? Yeah. It's a newcomer to Vue. It's really, really hard to understand what on earth's going on.
It was the most painful stuff I remember with the karma tests, because karma never cleaned up. It never cleaned up after itself in between tests. We had so many Vuex stores.
Messy.
We had so many Vuex stores that were singletons. So what this meant is all of the component tests touching these Vuex stores inherited the state from previous test runs, and it would just always run into each other and create gnarly situations. Let's solve the Vuex and Apollo. Let's solve that later. That's definitely
Sounds good. Just
if
one
you're-
idea.
if
You
you're
wanted to
using
do
Vuex and
something like-
Apollo, you're not creating a simple app. Let's just leave it at that. This is not the function for you.
Well, I don't know. I kind of disagree because it's like the
It really should
actual.
be.
It's not like that crazy to just set up Apollo so you can do GraphQL queries. Like you're just doing 2 things or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Now-
and it's pretty common.
I agree. We'll need to do it. I agree. We will need to do it, and that'd be really great to do it. Setup is an interesting function for that. I wonder if maybe we need to just provide the Apollo provider like just right away or something.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any downside to just setting up View Apollo in every app anyways. I guess the bundle size maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
Anyways,
The setup function would have to like return mounting options that then you'd spread into view and
oh
right.
shit, yeah.
But it
Yeah.
would be handy to for
Forgot
setting
about
up,
that
like,
part.
stores and stuff. And then it would probably have to take your view model as well if you wanted to like pre-populate your Vuex store
Oh god, all right, yeah.
I feel like Vuex not necessary, but Apollo. I think we should do Apollo because that's
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
How about maybe we should try and get this View app working first, or like actually render.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. We don't need to do the provide. That's great. Let's only provide one prop. Let's only explicitly set one prop and see what happens to the other one. Why is it red? Oh, it doesn't like type. I think you're supposed to give the foo a type. The type is going to be, is this the string one? I think it's
string, yeah.
I don't think you have to. Like that's just ESLint, right?
I need
oh,
a
it's because
template.
we don't have a template. Let's go ahead and put the template in there.
Then
let's show all the props. Let's just show like $ props.
Okay. Props. We probably have to do like
JSON and stringify or something.
No, you can just do $ props.
Okay, let's try it.
Sure.
Okay. Then yeah, here's where the like real boilerplate kind of comes in, which is the bummer. So I guess theoretically we could just call this straight from a pages index.js. I don't know if we want to do that though.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Let's try that.
Yeah.
So
Which I mean that's great because then we can get rid of all these like mount intermediary modules.
Yeah.
And every single page's entry point should have a level of feature test coverage that just asserts implicitly these things were set up.
where is this again?
I think it's probably lib. Oh, it's in helpers.
That's what we get for having a backend person make this file. I don't know. I don't know what the incubation engineer. I don't know his specialties.
Okay.
I think it might be full stack. That there's some backend influence happening here.
And then we need
the component, which would be the foo thing that we got.
Oh, I need to actually like put this up in here. Then import.
It would be cool to make that second argument a optional promise that we can wait for, that so we can do the if the element doesn't exist, then we don't import it into the main bundle. We can defer importing the component. We don't have to do that. I'm just thinking out loud. We don't have to do that right now. I'm just thinking out loud.
Clever.
All right, let's do it.
That.
Oh, there it is.
Works.
No, that's the Haml. That's not our. That's not our app.
Yeah.
It works.
Wait. Oh, we messed up the Ruby helper, I think.
Yeah.
Content tag data.
I think maybe you have to put this in a brace, in everything else in braces.
Oh,
is our Haml file referencing?
You need to look up content tag.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's showing it. Oh, yeah. It's treating all of that as its content. That's interesting.
Does anyone else ever notice that like this API.com website is ridiculously slow? No.
Hmm.
Okay.
I don't tend to go there.
Okay.
Oh, you just need an empty string, it looks like.
Oh, and then it lets you. I see.
Content or options with block.
I think we can just do the
I think you're
second
right.
argument.
Yeah, we could do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this will work, hopefully.
The rockets are your it's like the surefire. We're in Ruby land.
The what? The
The rock.
rockets?
Oh, yes.
Equal sign greater than.
Yes.
You see
The-
those, you see those in logs,
so-
you know we're in Ruby land.
So is this the view app?
No.
No.
Why is it
What
still
are we
not?
doing?
Do we need to give a? Maybe we do need to give it empty content.
Yeah, let's try it.
Ooh, are you thinking of contributing to GitLab?
Do we have like a jsconfig.json file?
No, we really need one. We really need one because then we could do the click through on JS Code or on the VS Code stuff.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
This is view app.
This is
Nice. So that's the only prop. Yep, and we get no extra no extra attributes either.
Oh, yeah, nice. Okay.
Can we
I
get
like
rid
it.
of our prop foo and double check that we're not getting any extra attributes?
Oh yeah. So now there's nothing.
Oh,
Have to go find
maybe
it.
I should have. Maybe there's a different way to do this. Oh,
There you go.
is that it?
Put some text in the
That's not
template.
it.
No, we gotta keep going. We gotta keep going. There we go. Is
There.
this there it is. Yeah. So that's the weird thing about render functions is it doesn't do
Yeah.
the weird pass-through attributes which templates do.
Well, that's good in this case.
Yeah. So cool. That's really great. So we get provide and props all together.
Does view 3
yeah.
support TypeScript? It does. If yes, will we move to that? Likely not. Well, I think that's one of the eternal debates.
The best hope we get for moving to TypeScript is if we can move cohesive parts of the product into cohesive packages that aren't even separate from the main repo, but just I see that as being the only way for us to introduce TypeScript at large, because we want to do it in a way that we're doing strict TypeScript.
Yeah.
And
You know, Andre's a big fan of like micro front ends.
micro front ends. Is this no front end?
No, it's the same similar idea where each front end is its own self-contained package.
Yeah. I mean, I love that idea too, and I think I think we're somewhat not close to it, but it's like that's kind of what has naturally evolved in the app JavaScripts.
Yeah.
But because they're not actually packages, we have horrendous package cohesion where we have cyclical dependencies if we did treat this as packages in a really, really bad way. So I do see a lot of our app complexity related to we don't really have an idea of package cohesion from the front end perspective.
Yeah. He'd be a good guy to talk to if you want to
Yeah.
dive into that.
Yeah, with the GitLab web ID, that's partly why I moved it. There are multiple reasons why it's in its own repository now, because of its integration with VS Code. But it's also using Yarn workspaces to try to implement the separating of packages. It's really nice. And I think it's very doable that we could iteratively move the main GitLab project to doing Yarn workspaces in a way that we can have cohesive packages of front ends. So yeah, that's that would be neat. That's, I think, the only hope of us potentially using TypeScript.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well,
this was
I think
fun.
we created pretty I think we did a good job of creating like the simplest way, or like the, yeah, it does the least amount of things, but it actually works.
Yeah. I think I'm happy that we got to conclude that we can provide and propify. I think that was a good conclusion. I'm really happy with it.
You wrote,
Did we test? Did we test the providing bit too? I wasn't
yeah, I
paying
just
attention.
did.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so then, yeah.
That's awesome. Bar true.
How many lines? We wrote 5 lines of code. So good job.
Go team. All right. Well, thanks everybody. You all have a great
Yeah.
rest of the day. I'll catch you all
Do you
later.
want to? Do you want to
sounds
see
good.
something totally off topic, really quick?
Sure. Do we want to stop recording? Is this?
Yeah.
We're gonna need some privacy for this.